This week's Torah portion contains one of the most disturbing of God's biblical commandments. In Parashat Matot, the Israelites are commanded to wage war against the Midianites, seeking revenge for their assault against Israel at Baal Peor. The Israelites did what they needed to do, taking their enemies captive, seizing livestock and their wealth. We read, "And Israel destroyed by fire all the towns in which their enemy were settled." Surely your minds have already wandered away from the ancient scripture to this week's headlines about the ongoing war in that same land of Israel. It's eerie how the weekly Torah portion often mirrors reality, isn't it? Tonight, I do not want to debate God's directive to wipe out the Midianites. Rather, let's explore for a moment Moses and the leaders' acceptance of the violence. As Torah conveys, Moses became angry with the Israelite commanders for sparing the Midianite women because they were the ones who caused the events at Baal Peor. How dare the army spare the very civilian soldiers who were responsible for bringing shame upon the people, terrorizing the Israelites, and separating them from God? As one Reform leader offers, this week's Torah portion presents a moment of raw, unsettling truth. Sometimes our sacred texts mirror human rage, vengeance, and the moral confusion that accompanies war. As Rabbi Josh Weinberg, the executive director of the Association of Reform Zionists, reflects in this week's Torah commentary, when Moses reacts harshly to the soldiers sparing the Midianite women and children, it's not because he delights in violence. Rather, he believes they've missed the moral logic of the war. These women had seduced Israel into idolatry and plague at Baal Peor. The line between combatant and civilian was blurred. Rabbi Weinberg continues, "Today we see something tragically similar in Gaza. Hamas terrorists embed themselves in schools, homes, and hospitals. The IDF faces impossible choices. To act risks civilian casualties. To abstain invites further bloodshed, rocket fire, and hostage-taking." Still true today, in this week's portion, Moses' actions lay bare the tormenting decisions that arise when ideology meets war. Most of us here have not experienced the immense responsibility of these tormenting wartime decisions. But most of us here still find ourselves wrestling with the realities of war in Gaza and its implications around the world. The unfolding situation there impacts all of us everywhere. This idea, too, is addressed in this week's Torah portion. Earlier in the book of Numbers, the Israelites conquered the territory east of the Jordan River. In this week's Torah portion, Matot, 2.5 of the 12 tribes, namely Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, request to settle there on the eastern part of the river. Appalled that they would separate themselves from the community, Moses asks the leaders who wish to remain east of the Jordan, "Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here?" In other words, when our enemies attack Israel, you will remain in peace in whatever country you're living in? In the words of an 18th century scholar, "Do not think so for an instant, because a war in defense of Israel is a war for the survival of the entire Jewish people wherever they live. Similarly, the unfolding situation in the land of Israel today impacts all of us everywhere in so many ways. My prayer for us tonight is for each of us to be able to open our eyes and our hearts to an unfiltered reality of the situation, regardless of our politics or the sources to which we turn for news. We can hold multiple truths at one time because the unfolding situation is complex. I am a Zionist. I love Israel. I love Israeli culture, Israeli food, Israeli music. I love my friends in Israel. I love my extended family there. Just as the psalmist pledged generations ago, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini, if I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. This war, though, is not Israel. I will love Israel always, especially now, with growing concern about rising anti-Semitism, and while Israelis still work through the enormous trauma of October 7th, 2023, the most significant attack against our people since the Holocaust. And this week I was shaken to the core by the picture of Yazan, the skeletal 2-year-old Palestinian boy standing in his family's damaged home in a refugee camp in Gaza. You may have seen it too. As much as my body screamed for me to look away from the image, I couldn't. We can't. We mustn't harden our hearts so that we would accept innocents going hungry or dying from lack of care, especially when it might be possible to help Yazan. Our Judaism compels us to help. Sadly, I do not see an end to this conflict anytime soon. I'm sorry, the sermon has no nechemta, as we say. I do not have concluding words of comfort or consolation for us. Similarly, as we reflect on this week's disturbing Torah portion, Matot, our biblical story does not resolve either. No words of comfort. Instead, what we get this week is space to wrestle, to really, honestly wrestle in our pursuit to understand a very complicated world. Understand so that we can act, working always towards shalom and wholeness. May we be curious in our pursuit and hold fast to our values always. Shabbat shalom.